back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. So, Jay, recently Bernie the Boxer was on Mill City Boxing. Shout out to Mill City Boxing for getting all those interviews that he gets. It's great content. And Bernie was on there talking about Terence Crawford and what's next for Terence Bud Crawford. Now, he specifically talked about both Tim Tszyu and Jaron Ennis, which I thought was interesting. And he mentioned that he believes from his perspective, but I don't know if this is necessarily the perspective of the team. I got in trouble one time before when I said that Bernie Boxer talks on behalf of Terence Crawford, and if he didn't, Terence Crawford would tell him not to talk. So, maybe I'm treading in water that is a little too deep or dangerous, but still, I'm going to go there. He's basically saying that their team believes that Tim Tszyu edges out Jaron Ennis. And what he means by that, Jay, is that when you look at what Tim Tszyu has done over the last, let's call it 18 months, and you look at what Jaron Ennis has done, that he has been more impressive. That moving up to 154 pounds gives Terence Crawford the opportunity to make history versus a fight with Jaron Ennis. Now, he did credit Jaron Ennis in terms of being a very talented fighter just based off what he said. And he said it was a good fight and still an option. But he feels that Tim Tszyu edges out Jaron Boots Ennis. Now, if you're looking at it solely from the perspective of who has had the better competition over the last, let's call it 18 months, yeah, I'm gonna go with Tim Tszyu. I think the Brian Mendoza, who else he's been in the ring with here lately? Tony Harrison, Goucher.
Tony Harrison, and Goucher.
Yeah, I think it was one
There's
other
another
person
one
he's
he
been in the
had.
ring with lately, but you can look that up very quickly. But when you compare that against Jaron Ennis, of course, he's been in the ring with the better competition, but Jaron, to no fault of his own, has not had the opportunity to really get into the ring with some of those types of fighters. You know what I mean? But let's be real here, Jay. Let's be 100% spot on here. Tim Tszyu, unless they have that fight, unless they stage that fight over in Australia, Tim Tszyu and Jaron Ennis are comparable draws here in the States as far as I'm concerned. I don't feel that Tim Tszyu is a bigger draw in the States than Jaron Ennis. I think by and large, fight fans would much rather see Terence Crawford versus Jaron Ennis versus Terence Crawford versus Tim Tszyu. And I like Tim Tszyu. I like what Tim Tszyu has done here recently. Tim Tszyu has made himself a legitimate champion at 154 pounds. You cannot knock what Tim Tszyu does. But you can also notice, and I think it's apparent to all of us, that the more highly skilled fighter is Jaron Ennis. And therefore, we would love to see Terence Crawford versus Jaron Ennis. Now, when you look at it stylistically, Jaron Ennis has a similar style. He's bigger. He can fight out of the left stance, out of the right stance. He has power out of his left stance, out of his right stance. And I know that Jaron Ennis' team would say that they're not similar because they feel that Jaron Ennis is a lot better. But
Yeah.
I say that they have a similar style, but you got one guy that's a little bit bigger, younger. You got another guy that's older and craftier. And I'm on record saying that I believe that Terence Crawford will edge that fight out just because I just think Terence Crawford is just the more seasoned fighter. And I think in this particular case, Jaron needs a little bit more seasoning before he would actually beat a Terence Crawford. And that's not a knock to Jaron Ennis. But I would love to see that fight because I think everybody will be intrigued with that matchup. Now, Terence Crawford supporters would tell you what has Jaron Ennis done to get a fight with Terence Crawford. But of course, we've made the argument, what have a lot of people done that have been in the ring with Terence Crawford who's had the opportunity to fight him? That's a weak excuse. I would love to see that fight, Jay. What's your thoughts on what Bernie the Boxer had to say in regards to the opportunities that are out there currently for Terence Crawford?
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much stated the same opportunities we thought as well. If he stays at 147, it really should be Boots. That's his biggest threat. He's actually also the most deserving at 147. If he goes up, we always said before all the stuff that happened with Mel that he could go to 150, 154, fight Tszyu, get that belt, and then he'll be able to go try to fight Mel to be undisputed very quickly. Because that's what Terence Crawford has said before for legacy. We also know Terence Crawford wants the bag. Not mad at him. He's 36 years old. He's done everything he was supposed to do at the lower weight classes. Now he can really get paid because he says he was pretty much underpaid in the past. So, I mean, as far as the bigger challenge, who's fought a better competition? Yeah, Tim Tszyu. The other person that we couldn't think of was Ocampo. I mean, he got rid of Ocampo in like a round. So I don't know if we can really say that was much of a fight, but yeah, he's definitely had the tougher competition. Who do I think is the more skilled fighter? I think Boots is the most skilled fighter, but the more experienced fighter is definitely going to be with Tim Tszyu based on the quality of competition that he's faced. So I mean, I'm not too mad if he were to go up to 154 and fight Tim Tszyu. That just means he needs to vacate the other two belts he has um, at 147. Let them all fight for those belts at 147. To your point, as far as fighting in the states, which one's going to be more known? I'm gonna go with Boots because he's stateside for one. People know of Tim Tszyu, but not really. He's been fighting a lot of fights in Australia. He's been selling them out. That's his home crowd and everything for those lesser fighters, lesser known fighters on that. Like Campo, I believe Terrell Grouchet was in the States, if I'm not mistaken. I know Campo was over there, Tony Harrison was over there, and Brian Mendoza was over there as well. So I mean, and then we know Bud's going to be the A side no matter what, whether he fights either one of them. It's going to be on Bud's rules, Bud's turn, and he's definitely going to get the lion's share, which is deservedly so for him. So, I mean, I can't be mad if he were to go to 154. He's already talked about, 147 not the easiest weight for him to make, but we know Bud is more so he stays in shape more often than not. So it won't be too hard for him, but it is harder than what it used to be because he's 36 and he moved up from 130, 135, 140, 147. So he's come up a lot of weight, and we know as we get older, it is hard to lose that weight, no matter how much of a gym rat you are. So I mean, either one of those I'm okay with, because it's not like what happened back in 2022 of going around and taking a David Avanesian. They've let it be known, his goal really is to get the payday to fight Canelo. We know that. We truly doubt that's going to happen. So what's next up? We thought it was going to be Spence. Spence has some issues with his eye. As far as the Catter had that done, we don't know when he's going to be back. And if I'm Bud, I don't blame Bud for not waiting and going to the next best thing, either moving up to 154 to fight Tim Tszyu or going down to staying at 147 and fighting Boots. Either one I'm happy with. So I won't complain at either one of those fighters if he fights those two while Spence heals up.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing in what Bernie the boxer had to say was that he said Spence was indisposed at the moment. He didn't necessarily say that fight was off the table. They just couldn't get to him currently because he was recuperating. So that was an interesting statement. I don't know if the fight is actually canceled, and I know a lot of people felt that the fight was canceled based off of what Terence Crawford said in a tweet in regards to being glad that it was over with. I never drew that conclusion. I drew the conclusion that he was glad that he had gotten through the first opportunity to fight him and proved himself. So we'll see what ends up happening in regards to this. To your point, I'm cool with either fight. I like both fights. Terence Crawford gets the opportunity to make history. I think what Bernie the boxer said was not inaccurate in terms of who has the better competition, but I just think he's using a metric to justify fighting him instead of fighting Jaron Ennis, because I think most people would actually prefer to see Crawford in the ring with Ennis.
Definitely would prefer Boots.
Yeah, you guys tell us what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to hate, like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Anger Man Podcast, AM Sports Media, and we are out.